And hello teachers and good afternoon. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. I hope that I'm clear no sa ating session for today. Medyo struggle ng aking internet connection for today. Only on mobile data kasi nasa Naga pa po ako ngayon. Okay? By the way, no, I'd like to give a shout out to SDO Kamsur for inviting me here in Naga to give the talk yesterday for the entire afternoon. Okay, and this morning, no, I was with Camarines Sur National High School. Okay, and I also gave a talk. No, and this morning it was both students and teachers no yung nakausap ko. So maraming salamat po. Okay. By the way, before we start, I'd also like to plug. No, I'll be back also once again in Naga on April 14, 15, and possibly 16. Okay. Kasi may mga nag-book na rin po ulit no, ng training. And as well as I'll be giving a talk for history teachers, social studies teachers on April 14 at Jesse Robredo Museum. So see you all there po. Okay? And again, sabi ko nga teachers, just let me know if you need help no, in terms of like training and I'll be more than glad no, to provide. Okay? And help you out. Okay? And again, sabi ko, no payment, no training fee, no accommodation, no transportation expenses. No? Ako na po yung sasagot sa sarili ko. No? Ang mahalaga, mapuntahan ko kayo and I'll be able to help you out no, with whatever you'll need no, in terms of professional development. Okay? So with that, teachers, no, we open our session for today, our today session. Okay, I will not be able to give a shout out to everyone, but good afternoon to everyone who are here. Medyo konti lang tayo, pero so please do share our link para mas madami pa tayong mga invite na teachers. No? Although, for those who are teachers no, who will not be able to join live and will be watching no, on replay, good afternoon po or whatever, kung ano man pong oras niyo panonoorin tong video na to. Ano? Okay, magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. Okay, anyway, so our topic for today will be on authentic assessments through project-based learning. Okay, so ito, often na napag-uusapan na to sa mga courses, educational courses, training, and in school, no? Okay, pero what exactly do we mean by authentic assessment? Siguro yun yung gusto natin i-clarify for today, okay? Because meron tayong konting pagkakaiba-iba, no? Okay? On our understanding of what exactly is authentic assessment. And I think the best way no, to look at an authentic assessment is to look at it from the lens or through the lens of project-based learning kasi napakataas at napaka-rich no ng authenticity ng mga PBL designs. Okay, so yan yung pag-uusapan natin for today and we'll be hearing no from one of definitely no reliable, okay, expert from the field, okay, and someone that I look up to in terms of professional development, giving training to teachers, okay. Medyo unmatched no, okay. Masasabi ko medyo unmatched yung kanyang ability to deliver no content and of course no train teachers because medyo hindi ko rin ma-explain na pero medyo magical mag-deliver ng ng professional development sessions na itong ating speaker for today. But anyway, I have the honor to introduce, okay, let me just read his bio note for everyone's information para lang mas makilala natin yung speaker natin for today. So our speaker for today, Jake Aragon, is an educator, professional trainer, and consultant with over 15 years of educational leadership and management experience. After teaching and serving as a student activity coordinator at Xavier School for 10 years, he assumed the role of AVP for Students Affairs and VP and Principal for the Senior High School Department of I Academy. He also established Team Solutions, a training firm that designs and implements training experiences focused on team building, leadership, creativity, organizational communication. And currently, he is the academic manager of for the Philippines of Acadesia, a Singapore-based mission-driven education technology company that aims to empower educators everywhere through a networking and learning platform called Prejum, which serves as a global community. Hindi na pala siya Prejum ngayon. No? Acadesia na po siya ngayon. Ano? Okay, baka mahanapin pa natin yung Prejum. No? Acadesia na po. Let us welcome into our stream, Sir Jake Aragon.
Hello, Franco. Good afternoon.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon. I hope that I'm clear, no? Medyo sana clear po yung aking audio. But magandang hapon, Sir Jake. And once again, thank you for lending us your time. We know you're busy, a lot of things na happening with all of the things that you have to do. But anyway, maraming salamat no for accommodating us. But anyway, before siguro tayo mag-start, Sir Jake, is that maybe you could give us like an overview or a brief summary no, of what we're going to cover for today. Kasi
Yes,
malaking
thanks,
topic
Franco.
to
Oo.
discuss.
Oo nga.
Yes.
But I'd also want to greet everyone joining us this afternoon. No? Good afternoon, magandang hapon po, maayong hapon sa inyong lahat. Welcome to another learning session with Kaagapay Teacher Support. Alam niyo po mga teachers, tong si Franco, wala pong kupas, no, yung determination and yung zeal, no, to really be able to bring very relevant, very timely education topics and issues into light. And the way we really develop as educators and as teachers is when we start learning from each other. And for the last ilang years na, Franco, 2 years, no, or 2.5, we've been doing Kaagapay Teacher Support webinars and training programs, and we've been touching, thousands of teachers ngayon, not just in the Philippines, but even maybe in the Asian region, to learn more about these very important and crucial education trends. One of the trends that we've always heard about is what we call authentic assessments through project-based learning. And so, Franco, ang overview basically is I'll share my experiences, stories from the ground, stories from my own practice, and show pictures and images of students who went through PBL units and who have gone through the PBL experience, so that our guests, our teachers in the audience, can see the different possibilities, the different opportunities that are in store when a school or a teacher implements project-based learning in the classroom.
Thank you, Sir Jake, and we're excited no to hear from your experience. I think it's actually yung value ng on the ground kasi iba pa rin pag theoretical ano kasi pag nagpapan nito sa mga training sessions, pag nagbabasa tayo ng mga reading materials no, we always read about all of this pero what happens na on the ground okay is a really
Exactly.
different no, very messy at organic ang classroom. So we're
Yes.
excited.
Oo nga, tayo, Franco, as teachers, alam natin, no, that the teaching or the work of teaching doesn't take place only in the classroom. Yung before and after yung matindi dyan, right? Kasi lahat nung klase natin, pinaghahandaan natin ng maigi yan. Pero pagkatapos ng klase, may assessment pa, may checking pa. Tapos pagkatapos mag-check, paghahandaan mo na naman yung susunod na araw or yung lesson. So I'm sure all the teachers in the audience can relate to that, right? So we learn, especially when we hear stories from the ground. So I'm looking forward to not just sharing my own, but also hearing from the teachers. Mamaya magtatanong ako, and we'll be asking our friends to type in certain responses that can help us connect our experiences and learn the issue better.
Yes, maraming salamat, Sir Jake. And while Sir Jake is preparing his presentation, may just remind everyone that this is also a certified session. You'll be getting a certificate, no? For a few days po, no? By the way, na-late po yung last session natin, wala pa siyang certificate. It's because I'm here, no, in Nagan. Hindi ko siya ma-process because of my internet connection. But I'll get into it as soon as possible. And ito rin pong session natin ito, no, will have certification, which will be given, no, before we have our last session next week po. Okay? So yan. And again, teachers, kung may mga questions po tayo, please do let us know. No? I'll be in the chat. No? I'll be interacting with you through the chat. Yan. Sir Jake, your presentation is now ready. Good luck po.
All right. Thanks, Franco. Just want to confirm, Franco, that it can be seen on the shared screen. Okay
Yes,
naman.
sir. Can be seen naman. Yes po.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So, tuloy-tuloy na tayo, dear teachers. So our spotlight for today will be authentic assessments through PBL or project-based learning. Ano nga po ba yung authentic assessments and how is it actualized through project-based learning? This is a topic that's very close to me because when I was the principal of a senior high school a few years ago, PBL was the main anchor of our curricular program. So I'm very excited and very much looking forward to sharing my experiences with you. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. Our big idea, dear teachers: projects build lifelong skills. Ulitin ko po, ang big idea for this presentation or for this sharing is that projects build lifelong skills. So similar to the acronym of PBL, which is project-based learning, let's also have this as our key takeaway in terms of what our big idea for this afternoon is. And again, I would repeat, projects build lifelong skills. So what is PBL, and how is a PBL unit structured, and what benefits does PBL bring, not just to the school as a whole, but ultimately to the students who go through a PBL course or a PBL unit. So please do give me your attention in the following maybe half an hour to an hour to talk about how we can use BPL, to make the most out of the experience of students in our classes and in our schools. Okay, let me ask you, dear teachers, and please go ahead and type into the chat box. Ano po yung mga projects na pinagawa sa inyo nung grade school, high school, or even college that you consider to be most memorable for you? What projects to this day do you still remember in terms of a requirement that was given by a teacher, a group project that you had to work on with friends in your class, or even, let's say, even an org project that you found to be very memorable for you? I'll give you a few seconds to type again into the chat box what some of these are. Yeah, thank you, Sir Franco. Sir Franco says that diorama was very memorable for him. Sige, hintayin pa po natin yung ibang responses. We know that marami po tayong projects and activities, no, or outputs that were required of us when we were working, right? When we were studying, we were working on school. But what else, dear teachers, do you consider to be most memorable? Yes, thank you, Miss Christina. She says that a role play is also something memorable for her. Yes, Sir Carlos says that yung maraming overnight sessions to complete. When you had to burn the midnight candle, right? When you had to work on your thesis. Absolutely. To make sure na matapos, right? What else other than a diorama, a role play, or a thesis? Are there other projects or outputs that you had to work on or accomplish that allowed that to this day you consider very memorable? Thank you, Sir Jeffrey, for saying that a demonstration or a step-by-step process demonstration was something that's also memorable for you. All right. Okay. Meron pa po ba? Please go ahead and just feel free to go ahead and type so that we can share with other teachers, other colleagues, what some of these very memorable projects are. All right. Okay. So we're seeing a lot of these things, na yung diorama, yung thesis, right, and yung demo, because these were basically very complex tasks, right, that were required of you, that went beyond the normal types of projects or assessments that you had to do. And we're seeing now that we have other examples such as pananahin ng damit, or practice teaching, or projects where there's a lot of interaction or interactivity that's taking place, that helps make these projects very memorable. Right. Thank you very much to the teachers in the audience who have posted, these responses. Well, these projects are memorable because of, the common qualities or traits that we somehow noted, such as high level of interaction or interactivity, or the complex nature of the projects, or where you had to make a physical demonstration, or something that went beyond the normal types of assessments. There are also projects that seem to be quite forgettable. No? There are also some projects na parang nung tinanong natin yung mga sarili natin or yung mga magulang natin, para saan nga ba tong project na to? Or ano nga ba ang natututunan pagkatapos gawin nitong project na to? Marami rin, no? Marami rin tayong experiences as to our inquiry or asking as to how relevant or useful these projects are. And to this day, especially because we're all educators and we've developed our lens, no, for what assessments actually measure learning and for what assessments actually are relevant for students, we are more critical, we are more discerning, right? We are more evaluative when it comes to understanding how these projects really are serving their purpose. And I think that's the one of the most important or key things here, that when we give assessments, right, that they're always aligned to the goals that we want, the learning goals that have been established. But at the same time, we're also inspiring the participation of students by making sure that they're engaged and that they're investing their time and resources, no, into the projects that they're making. So again, going back, dear teachers, there are projects that are memorable, there are projects that are forgettable. But now that we have a better lens or a better view on things, we know how projects should be constructed, we know how they should be designed, we know that they have to be engaging and responsive to students' learning needs. All right, so let's move on. Naalala niyo po, no? In 2016, that was the year the country formally rolled out the K-12 basic education program. And that involved adding 2 additional years to high school. And at that time, also, people, of course, were very reluctant into buying into the idea of senior high because it was relatively new, it was untested, right? And schools, not all institutions were prepared to implement the K to 12 program, especially the senior high program. So there was a lot of, discussion. There was a lot of debate. There were many commentaries and criticisms on the program. And even to this day, we still have many experts weighing in on the effectiveness of the K to 12 basic education program, especially the senior high school program. That's why marami po tayong opinions na nakukuha about it. But I do remember in 2016, I was working for an institution in Makati City, and I was approached by the owner of the school where I was working in to help establish the senior high program of the school. And so I sat down with a team of like-minded educators who belong to the same institution, and we came up with the realization that leading or implementing senior high was actually an opportunity for schools to reform and innovate. Pagkakataon yon, no? To introduce things that can contribute to making the promises of senior high real, and an opportunity for us to reform so that whatever it was that we would be offering to students would be innovative and totally useful and relevant for them. So the challenge was to engage students more than ever. The challenge was to bring them and their parents and the teachers and all stakeholders of the school on board. And so what we had to do was to make senior high school relevant. So the challenge was big. You know, it was a tall order to make something relatively unknown or unfamiliar popular or responsive to what the students and parents and other, school stakeholders were looking for. So umupo po ulit kami and said, okay, with senior high, with the format of senior high and with the way that it's structured, how can we introduce these innovative things, and how can we reform somehow the way people view the issue into something that would be positively seen or appreciated by the students. So what I said, let's go ahead and try some PBL elements. Again, going back to our big idea that projects build lifelong skills. Sige, subukan natin, no, na mag-implement ng ilang strategies aligned to PBL as we implement senior high school in our institution, right? So we consulted with experts and industry practitioners, and what we found was that, hey, karamihan po ng industries, many of the kinds of careers and work that our students find ourselves in will require them to work on projects, will require them to understand the dynamics or the basics of moving or operating in a project-based world. So because the senior high wanted to equip students with knowledge, attitude, skills, and values that will help them prepare for that kind of world, because it's a project-based world, then let's make it a project-based school. Let's make it a project-based curriculum. Let's make it a project-based learning approach. So that sort of solidified or convinced at least the small group that I was working with na yun po ang direction natin, and that is what we will do. Little did we know that as we went on planning, not only was it very challenging, but it continued to transform the way educators taught in the classroom and the way students viewed their learning. So let me go ahead and share with you more stories and experiences about our encounters with PBL when we were starting around 6 or 7 years ago. Right. Ito po yung mga strands that we offered, similar to some of the strands that you in your respective schools also offered. So we had ABM, we had Humes, and then we had specialized strands divided into other tracks such as computer programming or software development, animation, FD, and multimedia arts. At that time, kinausap po namin ang respective SDO assigned to our school because some of these strands were very unique, and we had to create curriculum that was not readily available or provided by DepEd at the time. So nagtrabaho po yung mga teachers. We had to consult people in the industry and in the field to put together the curriculum for the specialized strands that you can see on the screen. But more than that, of course, because we all had already talked about PBL, what we also wanted was to make sure that everything was aligned according to how we envisioned PBL to be implemented in the school. And so, pinag-aralan po namin ang PBL. And we found out that it was a form of authentic assessment. And dear teachers, pag sinabi po nating authentic assessment, basically, when we say authentic assessment, we're referring to the ability of our students, our learners, to bring to the real world or to translate into real life, real world skills, the things that they learn in the classroom. Yun po ang authentic assessment. And one of the best ways to concretize authentic assessment is through project-based learning. So naghanap po kami ng experts who define PBL. And one of the definitions that we got was that PBL is the act of learning through identifying a real-world problem. Simpleng-simple. Act of learning by identifying a real-world problem and developing its solution. So the students don't end by simply knowing or identifying the real-world problem. What they have to do is to come up with solutions to address those issues or those problems identified. And then a close friend of mine who also went about studying PBL defined it this way. He defined PBL as a custom teaching method that provides students with the entire academic and creative educational experience. So custom teaching method that provides students with the entire academic and creative educational experience through the conception and completion of authentic and meaningful projects with real-world applications. Ang ganda po ng definition because it captures the beauty of project-based learning, and it covers what essentially it's all about. That it's an approach to teaching. It highlights the academic and creative educational experience, and it tells you what students do, which is to conceive and complete authentic and meaningful projects with real world applications. So these are key definitions that we have to keep in mind as we continue to learn about PBL. All right, so let me check on everyone. If you're still there, simply type in the 3 letters PBL into the chat box. If you agree with me that you're learning from the short introduction and sharing so far, kindly type PBL into the chat box just so that we are anchored and are all on the same page. Into the chat box. Thank you, Miss Maria, Sir Marco, Sir Efren. All right. Sir Franco, thank you so much. Miss Mona Lisa, maraming salamat. Miss Arlene, Miss Fe. All right. So I hope we're all learning here and we're still discovering, new things. Ngayon pupunta na po tayo dun sa mga activities, dun sa mga projects, and to the content of what PBL really is all about. Okay. There are several steps that are involved when you implement a PBL unit, and these are the following. First, which is the most important, is what you call the driving question. Ito po, teachers, wino-workshop ko pa po to with my faculty to make sure that a PBL unit driving question is well-crafted. Bakit po? Kasi ang driving question, yan po yung tinatanong natin sa mga bata. And the project that they will create will revolve around answering the driving question that we declare or that we say at the beginning of the semester. And later, I will show you samples of what these driving questions are. Thank you also to the teachers who are posting very good questions into the chat box, because these are opportunities to discuss the topic in a more in-depth manner later. So the second step after you craft or create the driving question is what you call project design. All right? So uupuan po yan ng teacher kasama po yung mga bata. And based on what you decide on or what the students decide on to be the project that will help answer the driving question, the teacher will then somehow build his or her learning content experiences according to the project design that will answer the driving question. And then at the end of the semester, right, students will not simply answer paper and pen exams. What they will do is that they will actually present the project to experts, to parents, to other educators, or to people who will benefit from the project. So ibang-iba po yung approach niya in that sense that we're not merely grading them based on their performance in a test, but we are assessing or measuring their learning based on how much they understand their project and how much they're able to explain how their project can benefit the goal of the driving question. And so we see how the transformation is present. But dear teachers, these are the 4 key steps, right, that are usually involved in a PBL unit or curriculum. There are many elements. I won't go through it in detail, but we see there in a PBL unit, you have a lot of role playing, you have real world expertise brought into the classroom, there's a lot of collaboration, you talk a lot about real world scenarios, there's a lot of opportunities for students to show agency, and there are multiple methods of communication that students are allowed to use. And so these are the elements that are present in a PBL unit. Now, what happens to teachers, no? How do teachers' roles transform in PBL? And from source, we become a resource. When we see ourselves as mere lecturers, we find ourselves becoming facilitators in a PBL unit. Rather than simply being instructors, we have to model certain qualities, or if there's a demonstration that they have to do, then the teacher will have to model it. Rather than simply setting expectations, we now manage expectations. Instead of simply planning, we become partners of the students in designing their projects. And when we before, our traditional role in a classroom is simply we're speakers. In a PBL unit, we become listeners. So marami pong pagbabago or changes also in the way that the teacher's role will be seen in a PBL experience or in a PBL program. Going back to our big idea that projects build lifelong skills, right? We Going back to my story earlier, and after learning about the definition of PBL, the elements, the steps that are involved, right? We then realized that hey, it's really the way to go. And because we want to address that issue, that it's a project-based world that the students will find themselves in later on, after senior high or after college, then let's go ahead with implementing and crafting our PBL in our school very well. Right? Now, ito po, teachers, some sample driving questions that I remember working on with our teachers before. For ABM, one of the things that we wanted to answer was what business competencies are expected of senior high graduates in the Philippines? No? Kinailangan po na malaman if companies, at least in our area at the time, because the school was in Makati, would HR managers look for in hiring senior high graduates, right? And so the project that they had to do was a research paper. So it didn't have to be a new or a very different project that also required the students to make a presentation. And so at the end of the semester, they presented their paper to HR managers, to local DOLE officials in the city, and research experts. And so the students were able to respond and found out that the answer to the question. At alam nyo, ang naging sagot po nun at that time was, yes, companies were willing to hire senior high graduates because after all, they will still have to undergo, company-specific training. But the key competencies that are expected, are already covered in the essential, graduate outcomes that DepEd identified, or that schools wanted to ensure that they reach in those units at that time. So at the end of the semester, our students presented those papers to HR managers and research experts. The other strand, arts and design, ito po yung multimedia arts, where students are taught layouting, video editing, photography, vector design and illustration, and so on, right? And because they were also learning literature at that time, the driving question that we threw to students was, how can love for Philippine literature among children be promoted with the use of multimedia art skills? So because they learned layouting and vector illustration, we felt that the best way for them to demonstrate their skill is to create a storybook using what they know from their multimedia art subjects. And after creating the storybook, tell the story, right, to children of school maintenance and staff, children from an orphanage in the city, and book editors. And later, I will show you examples of some of the outputs that they were able to do. And for our fashion design strand, because we had also that specialized program in our school, we simply asked, are Filipinos ready to use indigenous fabric for modern clothes? So it was exciting to challenge the students to design and create, hindi lang po pag-drawing, but even to actually put together fabric using indigenous materials to to create modern looking garments or clothes. And at the project at the end of the semester, more than simply submitting a paper, was a fashion exhibit. And we invited fashion designers to view their projects and give comments or recommendations to the students who put the exhibit together. All right. So these are examples of the driving question, the project design, and the audience that we identified earlier as aligned to the steps in a PBL unit. So ito na po, dear teachers, some of the pictures. So at the end of the sem, masayo po dun sa school because we build our auditorium into an entire gallery of projects. And we call it the PBL Expo. Syempre, nilalagyan po namin ng theme, nilalagyan po namin ng design, and we divide the auditorium into different areas, and the different strands have specific locations where they demonstrate and exhibit their projects. But it's also the time when they'll be graded because the teachers who have specific, of course, subjects that they taught that contributed to the creation of the project had to go around and check the output of the students. But we also invited experts, industry practitioners, and parents to look at the projects and give their critique or their recommendations. And some of these judges actually were also invited to grade. So yung mga bata, nakita po talaga nila that these are the projects, the outputs that they created truly matter, and that they will really be used in one way or another, which later on I will be talking about a bit more. So here we can see how the students put up booths, right, and demonstrate their original drawings and creations based on what driving question it was that they were trying to answer. So for multimedia arts, as I shared with you earlier, one of the things that I shared with you was that they had to create an original children's story book. Yung ito pong drawing na nakikita po natin, ito po, mga bata po ang gumawa niyan. And then you see that there is an English title and a Filipino title because of course they also had Filipino subjects. And here you can see how the story was narrated in English, but there are also Filipino translations because, of course, they had Filipino subjects. And so the whole project revolved around the production of original children's storybooks, followed by storytelling activities because they had speech activities also at the time. And in this example, they were reading the stories they created based on Philippine folklore or literature to underprivileged children. So yun po yung naging ending. And many of them really treasured the books that they created. They even reproduced some for the kids who were in attendance, and many of them saw that wow, marami palang pwedeng marating yung mga libro, yung mga outputs na ginawa nila in school. Not only did they have to submit to the teacher for grading, but they were also promoting Philippine literature, and that was the answer to the driving question. Okay, this is another example for our multimedia arts project. What they did, because they were also taught videography or video editing, was that we came up with a trailer fest. Pinanood po nila yung mga popular na mga Filipino movies, dekada 70, yung mga nakakabasa na pala ako, anak, and so on. And the students didn't have to recreate the movies, but what they did was they created trailers. And so that demonstrated their knowledge of and skills of video editing. And so we invited film experts and directors to view the films or the trailers and give their critique to the students. So parang nagkaroon din kami ng parang film fest, but of course they were only watching the trailers at that time. Right? So this is part of the project because they also had to design the sets that they would use for their trailers, and because they were also taught how to lay out, they were also asked to create movie poster designs. Yan, nakita natin. Hinugot sa Langit, The Sara Balabagan Story, Darna, among other movies that they had to recreate. So ano po yan, throughout the SEM, they watch the movies, they discuss them in depth with the teachers, with their respective teachers, and at in the middle, they were producing these outputs to respond to the driving question. Earlier, I mentioned to you about our fashion design expo. This is an example of an exhibit, but here, what they did was that they had an exhibit that showcased upcycled textiles, accessories, and fashion materials. So ito pong mga to, ito po yung mga estudyante namin, ito pong nasa left, yung nakaputi po, yan po yung estudyante, and this was his creation. And here we have students, the two students in the rightmost part of the photo, tapos yung mga nasa kaliwa po, yan po yung mga ginawa nila. And these are materials coming from old garments or old materials that they upcycled to produce new clothes or to produce new material, new items, all as I've mentioned. So it's exciting, and at the end, they were able to showcase these to fashion experts and to fashion designers, and they were engaging themselves, in very good conversations about how the product can be improved, what other materials they can consider, among other things. Right? Okay. As I mentioned, we had an animation strand. Ano po sila, no? Before they animate, they have drawing classes, no? And the project that they did for their PBL Expo was to pitch a statement shirt with original designs to animal welfare advocates. Meron po kasi silang life drawing, no? And because they learned how to draw animals, instead of simply drawing them, they printed them on t-shirts and relayed the designs to animal welfare advocates and recommended slogans or approaches through art that can help promote the advocacy or the cause of the certain group. So yun po yung ginawa nun. So at the end of the semester, during the expo, that's what they showcased, as you can see on the screen. Okay. Our business management students wanted to help achieve the sustainable development goals of the United Nations, right? And so they came up with a trash for food vending machine. Tapos nanalo pa po yan sa DICT Youth Hack Startup Challenge in the year 2018. So ito po yung the where you can see the cursor. It's a bit small in the image, but what it is, dear teachers and friends, is that it's like the name of the vending machine is Aichibog, no? And with the funding that they got from some donor foundations, may halaga po, no, na kapalit yung mga sinasubmit nilang recycled bottles or other materials that can be recycled. And what the students do is that they exchange them with food. They exchange them with packed food that they distribute to the people. So they wanted to teach them how to promote sustainability and how to build that discipline of saving up let's say bottled water or iba pang pwedeng i-recycle. Tapos pag sinasubmit po yun ng mga members of the community into their booth or into their vending machine, then pinapalit po siya ng pagkain for the people in the community. All right? And we were also very privileged because some of the students who presented their research papers even got invited to present their research papers, their PBL outputs abroad. And as I mentioned earlier, this is an example. When these three students worked on the paper, The Perceptions of 21 Different Companies in Makati in recruiting senior high school graduates, some interested parties took note of their outputs, right? And even invited them to present in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So we found immediately how they were also, giving students wonderful opportunities to perform even outside, not just the school, but even outside the country. All right. Ito po, this was another ABM presentation, marketing plans naman. So what we did, we partnered our students with startup companies. And our students, because they had marketing subjects in ABM, helped the startup companies come up with marketing plans and campaigns. So nag-present po sila ng logo, ng campaign slogan, ng mood boards, ng marketing collaterals to the startup companies, which they would normally not, prioritize or have at the start, because of course ang concern po ng startups primarily would be operations, and then marketing would then follow. But what our students did was that they, creatively shared their ideas as to how those startup companies could market their products or their services. Okay? Ito naman po yung mga software engineering or software development students namin. One of the projects that you see here, ito po, this is a boat that they created, a prototype of a boat that they could control with their smartphones. But not only was it a fancy navigation output, but the boat also measured pH levels of the water that it was traveling in. So what did that mean, or what does that imply? It meant that the boat could also detect how toxic the water is wherever it was on. And so it served as a prototype, and the students were simply manipulating it from their smartphones. So na-navigate po nila yung toy boat, but at the same time, they were also getting readings of pH levels. And so that project was presented, to environmental advocates and even some representatives of the DENR, right? And it actually even got funded to give the opportunity for professional engineers to develop, actual and larger scale projects of the same design of the boat. So it's amazing how it has all, translated into new opportunities and new things for the students. Tapos ito pong nasa baba, bata po to, ang naisip po niya, backpack na kinabitan po niya ng solar panel, and that he could charge, his devices by simply putting his gadget into the backpack, and it would be charged as he walks under the sun, kasi nga nakukuha po yung solar energy. And so there was a lot of coding, there was a lot of programming, there was a lot of designing that took place, which of course was always, very good experience for the students and for the groups that the projects intended to benefit. Okay? Ang Humes students po namin, because they had immersion activities, tinahi po namin yung activities na yan. And so not only did they come up with a profile of the community, because that's what one of the Hume subjects required, but that they also identified what was the major need of a target community at that time. And here they found a local community in Zambales, and they realized na ang pinakamalaking problema po dun sa community is the lack of access to drinking or potable water. So the students, with the research that they did, which they learned from their Hume subjects, even came up with a project to donate water filter systems. And here you see them not only simply turning over the water filter pails that you can see here, kasi nagpartner po sila with a company that provides these things, but they were also training people in the community on how to use them well. So it was also very transformative on the part of the Hume students that this experience was able to give them. Right? All right, let's move on. I'll share with you a small clip. This is another output of our animation students. Kanina po, pinakita ko po na they showed their life drawing outputs through animal drawing exhibits. But this is a real animation project or output that they did. No? So mga bata po to ang gumawa niyan, grade 12 students, right? And this is aimed to address the problem of piracy. I think that was the driving question that we threw to them. How can we challenge issues on privacy. And so they came up with an animatic that helped address this concern. And here you can see how well they put together the text and the videos. Now, very impressive, very good po. And then, of course, we turned over the videos to the relevant offices or agencies for better promotion. So, napakagaling po ng naging output nito. All right. All right. So, dear teachers, so as I've shared with you, no, at first, when students hear about PBL, they see it as a lot of work. Yung ibang bata nga po ang sinasabi pa po nila, it's PB hell. Because of the amount of work that they need to put into crafting all these projects together. But later on, marami na rin po kaming estudyante na bumalik sa amin and told us, how they're very, very thankful for going through that experience and how the skills they've learned in PBL have led them to, build skills that made them succeed not just in college but even after. So student engagement is high. Students are learning real world skills. We were teaching them about sustainable development, and students were finding their learning meaningful. These are key benefits that we continue to find when you implement a PBL unit where everyone is on board: students, parents, other teachers, administration, key stakeholders, when they're all very supportive of this kind of approach. But of course, there are some challenges, and these are the following. Of course, in this kind of program, hindi po pwedeng one time, big time lang, or pag nasubukan po natin, tapos na, right? But what we also should look at is, one, how to sustain the program. Of course, how to train and retrain teachers, because we will always have new members of the faculty, and we will have to build that attitude or that mindset of PBL as well for them when they implement them. We have to maximize the participation of students because we want this to be very engaging and inclusive and universal. So we have to be able to do that as well. And so that's a challenge. How to archive the projects or to store them. That's why I like the suggestion here of Sir Carlos to say that maybe we can deposit them in a national public repository for reusability and improvability. Imagine if students from all over the country came up with solutions to all these problems, no? Baka hindi na natin kailangan ng mga leaders natin who are sitting now. The answers would lie in the hands and in the minds and in the hearts of our students, and those would be enough to keep us moving or to keep us developing the way we should be. And of course, managing shared resources, because implementing PBL will require, of course, the students learning how to manage their resources, time, energy, financial resources, creative resources, to be able to pull all of these things together. And of course, looking forward, if you decide to implement PBL in your class or in your school, hopefully, one, we can move beyond prototypes. Hindi lang po siya pang project na one time, big time lang, na submission lang, but outputs that will really change lives, that will really be game-changing for many people. So we hope that can be achieved as well. Second, when you already experience success in PBL, share the experience with other institutions. Hindi po ibig sabihin na pag magaling na po kayo sa PBL, yung school nyo or yung mga bata po sa PBL, we will just keep it to ourselves, because we see how it's also, bringing a lot of attention to us. But that's not the spirit of project-based learning. What we want to do is to constantly and regularly share what we know, what we have with other groups, so that they can also benefit from it. Of course, we create PBL content through publications. Marami pong PBL content, but most of them are foreign. Most of them are based in the US. So what we want is to create and contribute to that literature of project-based learning that's situated in the Philippines, that's localized in our communities. That way, how we will teach them and how it will benefit the groups that they intend to benefit will be very practical and will be very real. So let's all contribute to that body of language and literature. And finally, to engage more stakeholders to increase the impact of PBL innovations. As I said earlier, these projects, these ideas can change the way society runs, can change the way people think, can change the way our young students see the world. At the end of the day, pagka may problema pong binato sa kanila, right, they have a problem-solving mindset. They have in their minds that I have the skills and the confidence and the attitude to come up with solutions to these problems. And they will realize that the things you did in school will be absolutely helpful for them, not just in college, but even after. So once again, dear teachers, let's remember our big idea. Projects build lifelong skills. And if you have the opportunity to try PBL in your school, please go ahead and go for it. That's it. And maraming salamat po sa pakikinig.
Yan, Sir Jake, maraming salamat for giving us that very comprehensive. No? May short lang syempre oras natin ngayon. No? Okay? Sa teachers, yun rin yung priority natin. We don't want very long sessions, no? Especially our teachers are very busy as well. Pero nakita kagad natin, appreciate natin, of course, yung mga examples kanina. No? Sabi nga ni teacher, Sir Carlos Fortunato, no? If we can put that in a repository for everyone's usage. No? Pero technically talaga teachers na dapat ganun yung output ng PBL teachers, no? Isa yan sa mga difference, Sir Jake, ng PBL, no? That's that the assessment is not being done for the teacher's eyes only.
Yes.
Okay? Meron silang authentic audience, meron silang authentic na pupuntahan ng ng kanilang project. Okay, but anyway, Sir Jake, maraming salamat. Meron ng mga questions by the way, no, kanina pa no si Sir Carlos na medyo madami siyang questions about PBL. Maybe we can
Sure.
talk about briefly on touch on these ones, no. Okay? And this one is on question on how to align, sorry, lipat lang kita sir, no. Okay, how to align multiple students' personal goals with learning goals, customize groupings, customize objectives, how to reduce effort required to manage everything. Okay, medyo madami questions.
Yeah. Oo. Yeah, actually, issue talaga yan, no, Carlos and Sir Franco, no, how to basically align. Basically align because we have content to cover, di ba? May curriculum tayo, may course outlines tayo, and ito, even if you're talking about the most essential learning competencies, whatever happens, kailangan natin makover yon, right? But what is crucial is that at the start of implementation, right, there is buy-in, okay, from your principal or assistant principal, and from the community of teachers with you. That will open conversations on alignment. That will bring into the discourse yung mga pagkakataon kung saan pwede natin pag-usapan paano nga ba natin pwedeng ituro, let's say, ang statistics, no? Pero papasukan natin ng PBL yung statistics. Ako, naalala ko, Franco, no? Yung statistics teacher ko at that time, no? He was teaching statistics to fashion design students. Parang malayo yung orientation kasi nga fashion design more creative, more artistic, but because statistics was required, they had to learn it, right? And the PBL at that time was to to upcycle fashion, right? And of course they had to use actual measurements of models for their clothes or garments. Alam mo ginawa ng statistics teacher, Franco, what he used was data from Miss Universe pageants. Oo, no? And it was available, nahanap niya yon, no? Kung ano yung average height of a contestant, paano ginagawa yung mga gowns, yung mga ganyan. They all had data. And that became so relevant to the students. It became so connected to their context and to their experiences. And so that is one way to align, to make sure that there is buy-in and that everyone will be willing to contribute his or her ideas to the realization of the project. But again, if you talk about customized groupings or customized objectives, all of those things, of course, will have to be factored in your timelines, in your commitment deliverables. Kasi ang ginagawa rin namin at that time, let's say for students, kasi day one pa lang, Franco, Carlos, binibigay na namin yung PBL driving question. And then we anchor the lessons to that. And then they have a social contract. The students are broken into groups, and the students sa simula pa lang have to sign a document that throughout the semester they will have to meet these expectations. So malinaw yon from the start. Walang surprises at the end. And so I think that's a way to answer the question of Sir Carlos, that there are customized groupings or customized objectives, concerns, but the way you set it up, the way you design it will somehow address those issues quite purposefully.
Thank you, Sir Jake, for that. Siguro yun lang, yung last question on how to reduce effort required to manage everything. The key talaga
Yes.
dyan is that not to do it in just one subject. Okay? Kasi
Yes.
kapag one subject lang yung gagawa ng PBL, napakabigat po. Okay? So normally, a PBL is a collaboration between different subject areas, disciplines, that works together. And actually, if we're talking about the real life, ganun naman talaga sa totoong buhay.
Yes.
Mathematics lang yung gamitin mo sa isang sitwasyon, sama-sama na minsan mathematics, science knowledge, your knowledge in languages, among others. So, yun din yung gustong i-replicate actually ng PBL. Okay, so messy thing ang PBL, and to really manage it, it's to have other subject areas buy-in into it and collaborate para na ma-manage niyo yung mga workings, checking progress. You may question na rin si Sir about tracking progress. Pag marami kasing teachers yung nag-work together, we can track the progress of the students particularly well. Siguro lang, Sir Jake, baka din yung question ni Sir Carlos touches on are we giving up individualities in the PBL? And I guess, correct me sir if I'm wrong, I guess not, definitely not. Kasi sa loob ng PBL, marami ka pa rin mga check-ins, mga milestones that can be done in groups, individually. Pero siguro you also have to address or embrace Sir Carlos, once you embrace PBL, it's a task that needs to be done in a larger groups kasi naman talaga din yung isa sa mga pinopromote natin sa PBL, while in real life that's how you do things. Okay?
Exactly.
When you do projects, you can't do an entire building by your own. You can't do an
Exactly.
entire sir, implement an entire policy by your own. Okay,
Exactly.
so
Or itong kaagapay, itong KTS,
diba?
this is a big project, a big
Yes.
collaborative project that
Yes.
we're all benefiting from, no? Mm-mm.
So yung kagad yung reality na kailangan mo embrace. If you want to
Yes.
get into PBL, it's not going to be like how it used to be before na mini-measure natin, or binigrade natin yung mga students one at a time. Okay? Sir, ito very quick lang siguro, Sir Jake, baka meron kang
Sure.
way to answer this. How many PBL activities would be affected?
Well, the way if you were to ask me, let's say again in a senior high course that we did, it was really just one big project at the end.
Yes.
Pero there were mini tasks or
Yes.
summative assessments or tasks that led to the realization of the big project. But I'd also like to address one of the questions of Sir Carlos. At what grade level is this recommended? Alam nyo, in the States, as early as grade 1, may PBL na. No?
Yes.
Oo, di ba? Kahit simple lang yung task. How to keep the classroom clean or how to promote respect in the classroom. Right? As simple as that. And students come up with drawings or posters. PBL na po yun, dear teachers. So it doesn't have to be grand and super, elaborate all the time. It can be it can be plain, it can be simple.
Sir Jake, I also remember yung shinare sa amin one time ni Miss Rita, one of the advocates of PBL in the Philippines. Meron siya shinare a PBL project from the US. A grade 2 students doing engineering project.
Right.
engineering concepts, no, at grade 2. So ang ginawa lang nila basically is they propose how to make a better playground. Okay,
Oh,
so
there you
nag-apply
go.
sila ng mga concepts about how a better swing looks like, or a slide, no, yung ano ng mga slides, kay yung angle, things like that, no. Okay, tapos pinopose nila dun sa mayor nung kanilang ano,
Mm.
nung place nila. So ganung klase ng PBL, no. So hindi actually namimili ng grade level to, no. Okay,
Yes.
can be as young, no, sabi nga sir.
Yes.
Gra- uh,
Pero
uh,
magandang point 'yon, no, Franco. The audience at the end also matters because
yes,
that's how the students will see that the projects are moving and can be benefiting other people. So I remember when I was in Xavier, Franco, in-invite namin dati si Mayor Gia Gomez to
yes.
listen to the projects of the students. And
Is it
so
the ano,
hopefully
the city design?
yes, oo, oo. Oo, tapos kami nga gano'n din. Sino na ba? Marami na, eh, iba-iba na rin,
Yes,
but
actually,
yun nga, the
yes.
audience matters. Mm.
Yun. So maraming salamat, no, for that. Again, madami pang questions si ano, no, si Sir Carlos. Siguro pili lang tayo ng iba, no. One. Okay. Okay. Siguro ito sir yung ano, next question is that how to sell idea. Ito sabi kanina kasi natin is they have to buy in. Pero how do we actually let the students buy in into a PBL project?
Actually, Sir Franco, Sir Carlos, when intergenerational experts talk about Gen, what millennials, what Gen Z, what Gen Alpha, di ba yun na kasing bago ngayon eh, Generation Alpha na eh,
Oo.
are looking for, or what's common among them, it's the idea that they give back to the community, or that they're doing something to the community. That's always present when you're trying to come up with a profile of these groups. So what are we saying here? Alam nyo, pag sinabi nyo sa mga bata that this project can help you, can help your community, can help this certain sector or this certain group, and they can benefit from your project, that's an easy buy-in. That's an easy sell to them. Kasi may kita nila na may saysay pala, no? Malalim pala yung magiging contributions nung project. And so that's one way to sell it. And the second way to sell it, of course, they can they'll probably have their crushes in their groups. Hindi, joke.
Siguro
No,
sir, no?
but they'll be part of a team effort throughout the
Yeah.
semester. Na bonding rin yon para sa mga kaklase nila, di ba?
Actually, ako rin sir personally, no, if you look at the PBL, it's actually like more enticing, no, by
Yes.
design. Kasi nga 'di ba when we talk about, well, we'll go back to the idea of authentic assessments. That kasi laging tanong ng mga estudyante is that saan ko to gagamitin? Tama
Yes.
ba? Kapag nagtuturo tayo ng like formulas, concepts, ideas in the classroom, silently the students are asking, where will I use this?
Yes,
But
exactly.
that's what exactly what's being addressed by PBL, because from the get-go, from the start of the sessions, no, okay, you are already establishing why would they have to learn certain things, okay, in the class, okay, because naka-layout na. Kaya nga sabi, teachers, no, kung hindi natin tayong familiar about the PBL, ang unang-unang event, no, sa PBL, entry event. Kailangan alam na kaagad ng estudyante where this
Yes.
project is heading into.
Mm.
What's the relevance, no? Pag-uusapan na kaagad natin 'yan. And from then on, kapag nakita ng students may pupuntahan yung project, no, yung whatever I'm going to learn, not only for the teacher's sake, no, or audience ko yung teacher. Now, mas nagkakaroon ng ibang level, dimension, kasi alam nila, ipipresent namin to sa mayor, ipipresent namin to sa isang company, no? So yung level of motivation, enthusiasm to get into it becomes even higher. Not proven na rin yan, sir, no? Wala lang tayong siguro quantitative data, pero
Yes.
based on experience, Sir Jake, no, I've seen that in my students, that kind of commitment to learning, no. Plus yung pala, Sir Jake, no, one more thing na gustong-gusto ko sa PBL, dahil long-term siya, we
Yeah.
actually train them to be more gritty and commit to
Right.
learning in long terms. Kasi in most of the time, yung mga students nag-aaral lang, nakikinig just for a quiz. After
Yes,
the quiz,
exactly.
tapos na.
Right.
Okay?
Short-term mastery lang yun, di ba, Franco?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, sir,
I
no?
remember some students in our school, Franco, ayaw umuwi. Kasi nga, ginagawa pa nila
Tapusin pa
yung
nila, no?
I have
Yes,
had to
sir.
I have had to impose time limits for them to stay in school kasi nga they just want to keep on working. Pero syempre we were in high school. Hindi naman pwedeng hayaan lang, 'di ba? But that
Yes.
showed high engagement from their end.
Okay. Sir, ito siguro last question na, no? This is a question once again from Sir Carlos. And the
Yes.
question is on prerequisites to PBL. Ano ba yung mga dapat matutunan ng mga students prior to PBL, no? Or are there things that we have to teach them before PBL?
Well, yeah, actually, that would be a good, point also to raise. I remember when we first did PBL, syempre yung first 2 semesters, Franco, messy. Kasi nga,
Yeah.
we were
And that's
experimenting, we
okay,
were
no?
trying new things out. People didn't know what PBL was. But the year after, and the students who stayed in the school, sila na nagsasuggest ng driving question. And they were already telling us how to go about the project's design and what event at the end of the semester they would do, right? And so we also have to see it as a process. You take
Yes.
you take that
Actually.
dive into PBL, but I think more than the hard skills, Sir Franco, Sir Carlos, I think the soft skills, the realization that you collaborate, that you have to work as a team, na in your team, not everyone will perform, right? That, even if you've got things mapped out or planned out, you have to be gritty, as you said, or resilient in dealing with those kinds of challenges or issues. Those are the prerequisites that you need for something like this. And those
Yes.
are the prerequisites for working in real life. 'Di ba? Na hindi naman lahat mabibigay sa iyo by simply waiting for them or by feeling that you're entitled, right? So it's a reflection really of the kind of world that they will be experiencing or seeing later on. So that would be, I think, the best prerequisite. Ako nga sa anak ko, Franco, sinasabi ko, you learn everything about your subjects, but what's important is that, una, maging mabait ka. Pangalawa, when you're given a task, you focus on it and try your best to do it at all times. And that will prepare her, I hope, for the bigger challenges she will face later, di ba?
Yes, sir. No, I'd like the idea of messy. I think PBL is a
Oo.
messy thing. Okay, if
Yeah.
you are brave enough, courageous enough to embrace a messy thing, embrace PBL, no, at it will actually pay out, no, pay
Mm-mm.
dividends. And sabi nga ni Sir Jake, no, messy naman talaga yung mundo, no. So
Oo.
what are we creating in the classroom? Why are we creating ideal situations in the
Right.
classroom, no? While in fact, no, paglabas nila ng classroom, sasampalin sila ng katotohanan ng buhay, no? So mas maaga siguro, masampal na sila ng katotohanan ng buhay sa loob ng classroom while we're there to guide them, to mentor them.
Yes.
So yung mga, for example, no cases, Sir Jake, na mga class groupmates na hindi nagtatrabaho o kaya lack of resources, or kaya yung timeline, let them deal with that, no? Here in PBL, let's guide them, let's mentor them how to go around it. Para paglabas nila ng real world, they know how to go about it. Hindi yung na-lost sila paglabas nila ng school because they were not taught, no, or did not experience these things. Okay? Um, Siguro sa yun din, no, yung ano ko talaga about sa PBL, no? And siguro din to contribute, no, to what already was Sir Jake was able to said already. Ang siguro prerequisites to PBL, train the teachers. Kasi yung
Mm.
teachers ang mag-guide talaga ng PBL, no? Okay? If not, and also if we can have the resources, okay, alam natin, Sir Jake, na sa school mo, tsaka sa iAcademy before and even Xavier, meron tayong PBL coordinator. Okay, that coordinates everything else. Kasi talagang napaka-complex ng PBL, no. There should be someone that actually oversees, no, the entire project making, coaches the teachers as well if needed, mentors them, especially in the use of technology maybe. And siguro for students, wala naman talaga tayong particular prerequisite, no. Kasi nga PBL is learning in the project making. So yung mga dapat nilang matututunan nila yon sa loob ng project making. Hindi po ito yung linear, no, na
Yes.
progression na turo, quiz, turo, quiz
Mm.
project. Okay? PBL is like it's a whole lot of dimension, okay?
Right.
Ano po yan, no? Complicated. But again, it's the beautiful complicated teachers, no? And since maniwala kayo kay Sir Jake, nakita nyo kanina yung mga output, no? Once nakita nyo yung ganong klase ng output yung students, you'll be definitely amazed with what they
Yeah.
can actually do. Diba, Sir Jake? No?
Oo, mas magagaling pa nga sa teachers na eh. Yung outputs ng mga
Yes.
bata, di ba?
Yes. Kaya nga mahalaga din that we know exactly our new roles in the 21st
Right.
century. Hindi na tayo expert, no? Tanggapin
Mm-mm.
na natin yun. Kasi may Google na, may ChatGPT pa, sir.
Mm-mm.
So, ang hirap kalabanin ng mga yun in terms of like expertise, no? So, we are more of like designers of learners,
Right.
no?
Right.
Yan, hindi kayang nakawin sa atin yan. Hindi tayo
Mm-mm.
kayang tayo, kahit si ChatGPT, hindi niya ako kayang talunin
Wala.
sa designing learning.
No amount of AI can take
Yes, no
over
amount of AI can
APS,
do
di
that
ba?
for us. Maybe in the next 1,000 years, but not now.
Hindi pa rin, oo.
Yes, anyway, no, maraming salamat, Sir Jake. And of course, teachers, for all your questions, most particularly to Sir Carlos, no, for those very interesting questions that you've asked. No, hopefully, mas marami pa tayong time to actually talk about this, but that's the only time we have for today. And we'll have more discussions in coming days or coming months, no, regarding different topics on this one as well. Okay? But before we do that, before we close our session, Sir Jake, no, of course, we'd like to share this certificate of appreciation to be awarded to Sir Jake Aragon for sharing his knowledge and expertise in the recently concluded webinar entitled Authentic Assessments Through Project-Based Learning, awarded on March 18, 2023, training duration of 1.5 hours, to be signed by Franco Nicolopiadon, Administrator of Kaagapay Teacher Support. Ayan, maraming salamat po. Okay? So Jake, just as like always, maybe last message to our teachers, okay, words of encouragement to all our teachers out there.
Yeah, vision natin yun, dream natin yun, no? That, our students will be leaders of not just government, but of business, but of society someday, Pag nabigyan nila ng solusyon yung mga problema na kinaharap natin at ng mga anak natin at ng mga future generations natin. And pag nagawa nila yon because of the foundations that we lay down, let's say on PBL, that will be our most ultimate contribution, not just to them but to the world. So continue, teaching on, 'di ba? Gamitin po natin ito at lalo pa po nating palakasin yung ating mga bata, ating mga mag-aaral. And one of them is through project-based learning. Okay.
Maraming salamat, Sir Jake. And with that, teachers, we close our session for today. I'll be giving the evaluation link right after this, as we bid goodbye po. Okay, maraming salamat, teachers. Have a great weekend. Okay, ingat po kayong lahat, and see you next week for our last session for our March series. Okay, paalam po.